Hey guys, and welcome back to the Trihard studio. Guys, as a D&D guy, I'm so excited for this one because today we're getting into our first full dungeon room. We'll be using the column formations from our previous video to create dark and dank catacombs. If you haven't seen it, go and give it a watch. Q went to town off camera and built loads of different formations. Check out the circular stairs and, well, he has plenty to work with. First thing to do is design your dungeon. Put down a big piece of paper and roughly sketch out the chamber's boundaries. Think about where adventurers are going to enter a room. What blocks the line of sight? Do you want ambush points? Do you need an altar for a mad priest? Once you've got a rough outline, transfer it to some hardboard, vanity board, or some thin but resilient wood. Begin constructing your chamber walls. Your columns are 5-sided, so you'll be able to make natural connections between different formations. Don't worry about matching everything up flush, as we'll be filling in the gaps later. Q's got a plan to have one side of the room have a cave-in, which actually leads to deeper dungeon realms. So he arranges his walls against one side with plenty of room for a cave-in at the bottom. Glue everything into place, tweak your angles, and let the catacomb find a natural feeling shape. Now we're going to make a tiled floor for our chamber. This will be great for most RPGs as they can be used for model movement. These tiles are measured at 25mm, so use a ruler and mark out a grid across a sheet of cardstock and cut them out. To give your tiles texture, wrinkle them up in your hand and then unroll them. When PVA is applied later, it'll lock in the stone texture from the card bends. Begin sticking your tiles down. There are many ways to do this part, but Q just recommends putting down your first tile beside the entrances and working in rows from there. PVA glue the entire floor. It'll lock in your tile texture and strengthen the whole structure. Once that's done, Q bases the tiles in a watered down grey acrylic. Dungeons are latent with story. This will come out more in the next section of the build. As we said earlier, Q wanted a cave-in effect to suggest further dark realms. To achieve this, you need to run cardstock along the bottom boundary. This will be the peak of the cave-in. Next, cut long triangles and place them along the inner edge of the cave-in. This will be the rough structure of your rock scree. Bulk out the voids of the scree with paper, scrap bits of card, whatever you have at hand. Now it's time to lock in that whole scree with tissue paper and PVA glue. Once that's done, you'll want to base around the entire build, creating a paper mache base for a rocky boundary we're doing in a moment. This stage will incorporate the walls and fill in a lot of the larger gaps between terrain elements. Base the paper mache section with black acrylic paint. Now it's time to turn your paper mache masterpiece into a fully rendered dungeon. We're going to need a lot of stones, gravel, bits of rock, and gritty dust. The first layer requires your biggest stones and rocks, placing them along the scree, against walls, wherever really feels natural. Next, go in with your medium-sized stones, putting whole layers over everything. Progressively layer the stones with PVA glue, then put more stones on top. The final layers are basically rock dust blended with PVA glue, which makes it hard as stone. Look at the difference this makes, incredibly realistic. To finalise the whole build, Q uses his patented dirty water wash and paints over every element of the build. Having one consistent wash over the scenery is another great way to bind every aspect of the build into one flowing aesthetic. give all the tiles and walls a white dry brush. Q didn't highlight the stone scree because he wanted them to have a darker feel. And with that, we're finished. Today we've made a dungeon chamber fit for your finest adventurers. Next time we'll be cranking it to 11 and building a whole dungeon, so be sure to check it out. And until next time, try hard. Yep.